Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Jess Marcy. I'm a professional organizer, or as one of my clients recently called me, a clutter coach, which I love that term. And I help people deal with the clutter in their lives, the emotional clutter, the physical clutter, the spiritual clutter, the relationship clutter, any way that clutter can manifest itself. I help my clients address all of that. One category of physical clutter that we all have in our lives that can be really overwhelming and really difficult to address is our papers and paperwork that we have in our house. So I just thought that this has been on my mind a lot lately. I've been dealing with a lot of papers with my clients, and so things happen like in waves, and for some reason it's been paper month this month. So I decided that I really wanted to share some information that I have about why it's so difficult to deal with papers, and also how do we go about tackling that problem. I started to write a blog post, but I just feel like I just need to talk about it. So here we go. So anytime that we hang on to clutter, that is a fear-based action. So typically, if we are holding on to something in our life, it is because it's a fear of the past. So it represents something from the past, and we're afraid of the emotion that will come up when we let go of it. Or it represents like a fear that in the future our needs are not going to be met. So we're hanging on to some item to kind of hedge against that future when we're going to need something and it's not going to be there, and the universe is not going to be able to provide it for us. So any time that we're hanging on to clutter, it's all fear-based. When we have a lot of papers in our house and paper clutter, that also is definitely fear-based, but it's a little bit more complicated. So oftentimes we have a sheet of paper and it has some information on it, and we are afraid that in the future we're going to need that very specific information that is only found on that piece of paper. So this is a fear of the future not providing for us, but at least when we're talking about other objects, we can kind of talk ourselves through it. Like, do I need to have a full place setting for 32 people? Probably not, because in the future I could use paper plates, or there's some way that I can see right now, sitting here in this moment, that I will be able to figure out a solution in the future. But it's not like that with paper, because we feel like the information that is on that paper is unique to only that sheet of paper, and that somebody, and we can't even identify who that entity might be, but some entity is going to require the specific information that is only on this one sheet of paper. And it's so easy to just keep one sheet of paper because it takes up a really relatively small amount of space. So we are afraid that if we let go of this information on this sheet of paper, we will never be able to get that information again, and that there might be some negative consequence to us not having that information. So that's a fear of the future. Paper also represents a ton of our unfinished business, and this is stuff that is from the past. So we have paperwork from all sorts of things in everything that we do, every transaction that we participate in results in some sort of paper, and that paper ends up in our house. So every paper that we have, somehow links back to some event in the past. A lot of times, the papers that we have from the past are just unfinished business, things that are hanging over our heads that we know we need to take care of, but for some reason, we haven't done it. And usually it's something that's pretty small and can be done in a pretty quick amount of time, but we just don't feel like dealing with it. So that type of paper ends up being a whole pile of what I call unfinished business. Actually, one of my clients called it her unfinished business, and it's brilliant. And so I have adopted that, and now it really works out to help people understand what they have there is representing a lot of unfinished business in our lives, or fear of the future. Another reason that it's so difficult for us to get rid of papers is because where we can simply donate our other goods in our house when we're starting to declutter, papers have a lot of unique identifying information on them. And so then we feel like there's this pressure to destroy the paper before we get rid of it, before we recycle it or before we throw it out. Even recycling some paper can be a little tricky because we're not sure if we can recycle this type of paper or that type of paper. We feel like we need to have a shredder to shred the information, or we need to burn the information. But there's just this one extra step to letting go of the papers that we have because we're not sure how to let go of it. The fourth reason why dealing with papers is so difficult is because we often have commingled categories when it comes to papers. So typically we have our normal everyday to-do papers, medical paperwork, identifying paperwork, bank statements, credit card statements, magazines, newspapers, all that type of paper. But then mixed in with all of that, we have memorabilia. So we have artwork that our child brought home from school. We have a note that somebody sent to us. We have a birthday card. We have all sorts of memorabilia mixed in with our everyday paperwork. So we have a commingled category. So you start to deal with this giant pile of papers and you get to something that really elicits a lot of emotion and you're not sure what to do with it. And then all of a sudden, it's hard to deal with that whole pile of papers because you got stuck on what is really just memorabilia. So, how do we go about addressing all of this paper that we have in our life? First of all, remove the memorabilia from the rest of the paperwork. So that's a separate category. So if you have, a card, current schoolwork from your kids or last year's schoolwork, artwork, anything that would really fall under the category of memorabilia, just pull that out and put that aside. You're not dealing with that right now. Memorabilia is like the last thing that we ever deal with. So that just goes into a separate area. Don't deal with that right now. So step number one, separate out your commingled paperwork into distinct categories. Number two, figure out before you start, how are you going to dispose of the stuff that you choose to dispose of? Some people are okay with just tearing it up and putting it into the recycling bin. Other people like to tear it up, put it into the garbage. Some people would like to shred it. So you either then need to use your community, which means reach out to friends and family and find out who has a shredder that you can borrow, or you need to take your paperwork to someplace where they do shredding for you. And you can search on the internet and find a local place. Sometimes whole towns hold shredding days where you can bring your stuff to be shredded at that time. There are services that will come and do it for you. Other people like to burn their papers, which you would have to figure out also if you're able to do that in the location where you live. So whatever you feel the most comfortable with, figure that out before you start dealing with your paperwork, because that will answer a question that's going to stop you up during this process. Deal with the papers. So you have this whole amount of paper in your house that needs to be dealt with. One way to start dealing with it right away is to just agree with yourself, make a deal with yourself that you're going to at least deal with the stuff that's coming in. So the brand new stuff that's coming into the house. So your mail, your work that you're bringing home, papers from the doctor, any paper that is coming into your house. Just figure out how to deal with that right away so it does not add to the existing piles of papers that you have. So I like the 5-minute rule when it comes to papers. If there is a sheet of paper and you can deal with whatever is on it that you need to do within 5 minutes, or you can file it, or whatever you need to do with this paper, if you can do that in 5 minutes or less, that's a do right now. So if it's a phone call that you need to make, if it's a letter that you need to mail, if it's a form that you need to fill out to send back to your child's school, whatever it is, if it will take less than 5 minutes to deal with it right away. Is it just sorting the mail that came in into recycling and then into, the two different piles that you have in your house for that, deal with all of that right away. So address the flow coming in. Then start going through your papers one file at a time. If you can find the information someplace else reliably, then you don't need to hang on to that paper. So if you can find, if it's like a manual for your dishwasher, an operation manual, how do you turn it on? Typically all of that information is available on the internet. A quick Google search will find it for you. If it's like bank statements, credit card statements, all of those things, you need to figure out with if there's anyone else involved in this. So if you have a partner that you live with or other family members, you know, how long do you feel like you need to hang on to those type of bank statements and things that have, you know, are related to your taxes? Depending on your specific circumstances, that will be different for everyone. So maybe you need to contact a tax professional and find out what you should be holding on to and for how long. And then I would recommend writing that down someplace on a folder, maybe where you're storing your papers, and making a consistent effort then to have flow. So as things are flowing into that folder, make sure that the outdated information that you no longer need to hang on to is flowing out of that folder. Because if you don't have flow, then you end up with clutter. And then find those really important documents that you would need to reestablish your identity if there were a natural disaster, and put that stuff into a fireproof safe. Now, I don't mean a huge $1,000 safe. You can get little fireproof boxes from all sorts of office supply places. I think I even saw them at Target, and Walmart sells them. Put all of your identifying information, your birth certificate, marriage certificate, passports, anything that you would need to reestablish your life after a natural disaster, that goes into a fireproof safe. Everything else gets categorized with like items. So have your medical stuff together, have your, car stuff together. And then once you don't need that paperwork anymore, make an effort to let go of it in the way that you figured out is best, with shredding or, however you decided to deal with that. But get on top of your paperwork. If you have unfinished business, then start to address it. You don't need to address it all in one day. This is a long process. Start addressing the easiest unfinished business first. We always go emotionally easy to emotionally difficult. So start dealing with the emotionally easy stuff immediately. And you will find some peace of mind with the amount of paperwork and papers that are in your house. So papers are difficult. They have a lot of unique challenges, but you can definitely handle it. So part of that is just getting started. I hope you found these tips helpful. Make sure to subscribe to my channel so you're notified when I have a new video. You can also check out my website, prioritizeyoursanity.com. All right, have a great day.